Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist, presented by Community America Credit Union. So much focus on this community, on leadership, on making the world a better place. And I know for a fact that I've got a guest in an episode today that will really intrigue people with a phenomenal story. I'm a storyteller at heart, along with being a baseball guy and a TV reporter and all of that kind of stuff. But I love and will always love the good, inspiring story. And that's what I have today. My guest is a young man by the name of Ebrima, also known as Abraham Sisay. He's a filmmaker, a producer, director, based here in Kansas City, and the founder of Alkamba Company. He grew up in a Northwestern African island, a country by the name of Gambia. And maybe you've heard of it, maybe you've not. We'll learn plenty about that. But he is someone that grew up there. He came over here. He had ambitions of being a superstar athlete, but along the way experienced a lot of tragedy, a lot of trauma. He has learned how to deal with that. He is making a documentary about it right now. It's really fascinating stuff, not to mention just an amazing story of making his way to the United States and making all of this happen and so much more ahead. So that's a very short, simple version in introducing my guest today. So I'm happy to be joined right now by Abraham Sisay. The actual name is Ebrima Sisay, but I guess, Abraham, when you come over to the United States and they've never heard of a name like Ebrima, Abraham happens. Is that what happens?
No, yeah, exactly. That's what happened back in college. It's like whenever I'll introduce myself, Ebrima, they're like, wait, is it the same as Abraham? Eventually I was like, you know what, sure, I'll add Abraham in my name. But
there's no way anybody growing up in Africa was calling you Abraham, right?
Nope. It just happened here. And I also learned that Ebrima and Abraham is the same name. So
interesting.
It's like, cool. Worked out well. Yeah.
All right. There's so much to your story. And, I've done series, special series about mental health. I also believe that almost in every interview now, whether it be an athlete, whether it be a business person or anyone in between, there could always be questions asked about mental health because we're all dealing with something. Sure. And the stigma is starting to be removed to an extent where people, in part because of many like you, encouraging others to tell their story, telling your own story is allowing people a little bit more comfort, maybe a little bit more confidence in talking about something that was always so taboo. Yep. And so we'll get to your story because it's a really, truly an amazing one in just a moment. But let's back up. Growing up in I think a part of Africa or an area of Africa, maybe where a lot of Americans may not be familiar with it. So tell me about your heritage and growing up and what that country was like.
Yeah, for sure. But thank you so much for the great introduction. As you were talking, I was like, I should add that to my intro as well. But but yeah, I mean, you made me sound super important. But thank you. So thank you for making this opportunity and just wanting to talk to me. But yeah, so I actually grew up in Gambia. It's a very tiny island inside a country called Senegal, but it's like its own country, and it's like one of the most peaceful country in West Africa, but probably the entire Africa, because a lot of people don't know about it. So yeah, I grew up there, and my entire childhood, I've been around a lot of people because my grandpa, he was like the last generation that would have 3 wives. So he has like 3 wives and a bunch of kids. I don't even know how many uncles and aunties I have, honestly, at this point. But yeah, it's so that's the type of family that I grew up in. It's a very big family. Everybody has access to whatever you own. So the whole community aspect of it kind of stuck with me. Literally, my company Alkamba means community because of that experience that I had in West Africa with my family. So yeah, it's a very special place for me, and I just just memories of it is just very special in the back of my head and in my heart as well. But yeah.
What was the language growing up there? Was it a local dialect or what
was
it?
Yeah. So I actually came from the Mandinka tribe. So I actually tell African Americans that I am their grandparents because the tribe that came that was brought here were the Mandinka tribe. So that's the tribe that I came from, and I used to speak French. But after moving to America, I just lost all that. But I spoke about four different local languages, which was the Mandinka, the Wolof, the Sarahule, and the Jola. But now I can only speak the Mandinka because that's what my parents speak. The rest is just friends that I've kind of accumulated growing up. But I lost like all of it except the Mandinka and English, as you can see. But
Yeah.
French is gone. I can understand. But when I try to open my mouth, English just comes out. And I'm just like, oh, I need to learn this again. But yeah.
Well, you sound like really any American, a little bit of an accent, but nothing more than that. And of course, you spent enough time here in the States. This is home,
I know.
specifically Kansas City.
Hmm.
And I'll back up in a moment so we can tell your story, because it really is one
Hmm.
of trauma and
Yeah.
tragedy, and one that you are now using a platform to
Hmm.
help others with. But how does a kid from Gambia
Hmm.
end up in Kansas City?
Man, so I've never actually heard of Kansas City until when I was about to travel. I was gonna go to Maryland because that's where all my friends are right now. I mean, Maryland in West Africa was the conversation. Everybody wanted to go to Maryland, especially in Gambia because a lot of our uncles are all there. But one of my uncles lives in Kansas City, and he asked me to stop by in Kansas City, and I was like, no, I just want to go to my friends. And he's like, just come to KC, you're gonna like it, I promise. And I just bet on his promise, and I showed up. And the reason why I stayed was the community in Kansas City. That's literally the hook for me to stay here, because I went to Westport, and back then I used to dance. I used to do like b-boy, and I also had a stutter, so I used to kind of like communicate through dancing. And I bumped into a very big community of dancers in Kansas City, and I was like, okay, this is special. And they kind of like accepted me, and the whole aspect of just being a kid and wanting to fit in into a community, and then finding a dance group of people that actually were interested in the style of dance that I was doing, because I came from Africa with a different style, so they were all intrigued. And that was the reason why I stayed in Kansas City. Honestly, nothing like philosophical or anything, but it was the community here, number one, and my uncle just made it very easy for me to stay here. And I canceled all plans, and I decided to stay in Kansas City. And it's been 10 years. I keep saying I'm going to go to Maryland eventually, but I've never been. It's been
So
10 years now.
so how old were you when you came over to Kansas City?
I was 20 when I came
Okay.
here, about to be 21.
And what was the motivation, at least what originally was going to Maryland, and
Hmm.
you took well, I wouldn't say a wrong turn, maybe a right turn,
Yeah,
and
I know.
ended
I
up in
did.
Kansas City. But why leave Gambia to come over to the United States? Were you looking to come study? Were you looking to come travel, experience new things? What was your motivation?
I'll probably say a little bit of both, but I had a specific reason why I wanted to leave Gambia, which has to do with my story, which is me growing up and playing soccer and being really good at it, and wanting to become a professional soccer player, and then losing that opportunity, and just being super lost. And I wanted to travel and get out of that country because a lot of trauma happened there that I didn't want to deal with anymore. And in my head, I just believe that if I leave the country somewhere, my problems are going to disappear. So that was one of the main reasons why I came to America. But I had to convince my dad, and I would say, "Hey, I want to go study abroad." And he's like, "I'm so proud of you. Let's do this." And then I ended up here. But yeah, that was the reason why I came. A few of the reasons why I decided to move to America.
Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe the studying part was a way to get his approval to
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
here, but you
Of
really just
course.
wanted to get away. You did end up
I
studying.
did.
Everything really has
Yeah.
worked out. But let's
Mhm.
tell this story now, because and I'll let you pick up the pieces here. But I'm
Mhm.
guessing if you had, look, any kid growing up all over the world that
Mhm.
likes sports, not every kid likes sports, by the way, but
Yeah.
if they like sports, they love sports, they probably dream one day of being a professional athlete.
For
And I
sure.
know for you, that dream was, if I remember correctly during our conversation, was that
Mhm.
you wanted to play for Manchester United, one of the, in baseball terms, that's
Yeah.
like the Yankees of
Yeah.
the international soccer world. And so
Mhm.
that was your dream.
Mhm.
And it sounds like, I mean, I don't know if it would have ever happened or not, but it sounds like you legitimately were a big time soccer player on your
Mhm.
island in your country. So tell me about that. Give me a little bit of a frame of reference for age. And
Mhm.
then I know that there was a tragedy that really
Yeah.
changed the whole direction of your life.
Yeah, for sure. So, back in Gambia, it's either you're a doctor, a soccer player, or a failure. Literally, it's like that's the kind of category. And my goal was to become a soccer player, but I had really good grades in school, so I was like the good kid. Everything was going so well. And as far as soccer, I was being groomed by my coach to like eventually go pro with it. And it got serious at age 10 going to 11, 12. But I actually got an opportunity to do a tryouts for Puma, the brand, and become like one of their athletes, and then get groomed into becoming a professional player, and that was going to land me to Norway and eventually England. And I was super excited about it, the fact that so many kids were like trying out, but I was the best, obviously. No, like I was 100% confident that if I knew what was wrong with me back then, I would have made it. But again, back in Africa, mental health was not a conversation that anyone talks about. And me going through that trauma, which is one of my really really close friends that I grew up with all the way to age 12. We always competed. He was kind of like we were kind of like yin and yang, even though I was really better than him in like certain ways, as far as kind of like scoring goals and stuff. I would play midfield, kind of like the center position or forward, and he would play the flank right or left, right wing in America, left wing, and then he's the one who would deliver the balls to me to like make the score. So I see someone that I always needed, but at the same time, I was the starter, and sometimes he would come in later in the game. But one day when the decision happened for me to get sponsored by Puma and all these great things were about to happen, and he didn't make it, so we just decided to go to the beach, like the whole team, and just like kind of like celebrate and just have a good time. And he ended up like drowning that day. And yeah, so that was something that started like highlighting all the problems that I later experienced in my life, as far as anxiety. And literally in the middle of the game, whenever I'm playing, I'm constantly freaking out to a point that I could not even kick the ball because of all the trauma of watching my friend drown and not being able to save him. I somehow, in my head, just made it my fault because I watched it happen and just screaming, and I didn't do anything about it. So my whole life, I was blaming myself, like, oh my God, this is my fault. I should have just jumped in and saved him. But I didn't know how to swim. I was a little kid and just, didn't know what to do in a situation like that. And yeah, so I started having like panic attacks and just having difficulty sleeping, and didn't really know how to talk about it because back in Africa they just say, I'm gonna pray for you, that's it. But it's like, okay, what does that mean? Like, yeah, I never had the space because my environment um didn't know how to deal with a situation like that, because people die, right? And you just learn to move on. But me as a little kid, I was dealing with that trauma and just having flashbacks of him drowning and his hand disappearing over and over again. So it's little by little, I started like showing up to like practice super late or tired or just not performing properly. And while I was going through all of that, I got like molested by one of family friends. I don't even know how we related, but he's always in the house there. And turns out he was doing that to a lot of other kids. And I later found out that he did that to my friend that actually passed away too. So it was like that really messed up with my head as a 12-year-old kid. And that's when I started, actually stop, showing up to play soccer. And slowly I just kind of disappeared from showing up, and I quit the game. But I was getting called by the whole team and they expected me to show up. But to me, it's like, I don't even know how to kick the ball again. And my confidence started slowly disappearing. And that's how I developed a really bad stutter from just the stress of having all these things that I wanted to talk about, but I didn't know how to talk about them. So it just turned out like manifested into a stress. And that's when I started saying, maybe if I leave this country, my problems are going to disappear because I'm going to leave them there. And that's when I had to convince my dad. And then I ended up here. But yeah, so it's like the all that trauma manifested into a stutter, and then from there it was just like problems upon problems upon problems. Yeah, so I can go on and on, but but yeah, I'm gonna let you take there.
Well, it's an unbelievable burden for anyone at any age, let alone a
Hmm.
12-year-old, and then a 13 and a 14. I mean,
Yeah,
this wasn't. I'm pretty sure this wasn't you just dealing with this at 12. This was you dealing with it every age
yeah,
afterwards
every age, yeah.
too. And I've got to think. I think this is probably universal
Hmm.
around the world for athletes, musicians,
Hmm.
entertainers, people that are in the spotlight based on doing something that not everyone can do.
Hmm.
That those athletes, those superstars are supposed to be tough. They're supposed to have
Yeah.
all the answers figured out. They are also the ones that people want to talk to the most and get the
Hmm.
most attention and get them right. I mean, that's universal, whether you're in Gambia or whether you're in the United States
Hmm.
or you're playing soccer in Brazil or
Yep.
hockey in Montreal or whatever it is, right? And
Hmm.
so I'm guessing that you went from being the superstar in terms of
Yep.
attention, as much as a 12-year-old can be,
Exactly.
to
Hmm.
feeling like the whole world had caved in on you.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, like I was the favorite kid, like in the neighborhood. Like literally, whenever we have a game on our way back home, the whole neighborhood would be like, "Did you score today?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, I did." Like, I was that kid from that to becoming like, just avoiding people in general because the shame of knowing that okay, this happened to me, getting molested as a little boy, and I'm just like I'm not gonna tell this to anyone, and I'm not gonna share it because how do you go and tell your friends, hey, I was just molested by this guy, and the guy is like very well like respected in the community, so it's like who's gonna believe you? And there were moments where I've tried to talk about it, but again, even though it's not my dad's fault, it's just that that's who he is. So he doesn't talk about feelings. He doesn't know how to communicate it. I've never actually heard my dad say "I love you." Like,
Mm.
it's like yeah. So it's like how do I go and communicate to him like say hey this is what's going on. So yeah, my environment itself didn't have this space of love I call it now to actually go and have that conversation and share my feelings and be vulnerable and then have that vulnerability being accepted by whoever I'm talking to, either be my dad or mom. It's like they don't know how to deal with things like that, so I just kept it to myself and just kept living. But it was like every year was just another day for me to just feel even more close and locked in and just in pain, and yeah, I didn't know how to deal with it.
Do you think if you had stayed in Gambia, would
Mhm.
you be where you're at this point? I mean, or would you still be hiding so much of this?
I'll probably just be hiding.
Mm.
At this point, if I was still in Gambia, I'll be kind of like working for my dad, because the requirement for him to pay for my trip was for me to work for him so that he can see whether I'm old enough or responsible enough to live in a different country by myself. So I actually work for him because he owns a traveling agency, and he owns a couple like chartered flights. So he was actually paying for pretty much everything when I first came to America because I proved to him that I was responsible enough and I can take care of myself. So if I was still in Gambia, I'll probably work for him and I'll be in a decent position this by this time. And but still, from the outside, I will look like I have a great life, but from the inside, I'll probably be doing some drugs eventually because that's a route that my older brother went through.
Mm.
He also had his own mental struggles, and I mean, I don't even know where he is. It's because he's dealing with a lot of um like some really serious like depression because he does a lot of drugs as well. So I can see myself going down that route if I
Mm.
was in Gambia, but outside I'll probably have a decent, everyone's gonna think, oh yeah, he's the one favorite kid, and everyone knows, and he's from the Sisay family. Everybody knew my family back then because I mean, still today, we even have songs being done by like musicians back in Africa. So it's like I would have been okay, but like emotionally, I'll probably emotionally dead and just be a shell, waking up, going to work, and that's the last thing that I want to be. So moving here was definitely the right decision, even though I went through some really very like troubling times just to be where I am today.
And so where you are now today is musician still, an
Mhm.
entertainer, but now filmmaker,
Mhm.
working on a documentary. By the way, whatever the stutter was, which was
Mhm.
something, as you said, came from the trauma,
Yeah,
has gone away, because
yeah,
I don't hear that.
I
That's
know.
miraculous and amazing, because to me it
Mhm.
shows the transformation. Not that, and my wife is much more the expert on this than me, because she's a
Mhm.
speech language pathologist. But I
Mhm.
know that doesn't just happen overnight.
No, it
That
doesn't.
takes a lot of work, and sometimes the work doesn't even lead to results. But
Mhm.
what it tells me is that you figured out a way to find yourself,
Yes,
beyond just the stutter, but in terms of having a voice,
for
in
sure.
terms of going out there and now taking your tragedy and your
Mhm.
trauma and using it to help others. So tell me about that process, because now you're in the middle of making a documentary, and you're working
Mhm.
on something called the Freedom Project, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Freedom Project. Yeah. So, man, the process, like literally, whenever someone asks me, it's like I started having flashbacks. Before, I used to like freak out, but now I just like smile because I know what was happening back then. But but where can I even start? So when I first moved to America here, I was very naive. I was really happy, and I was like, well, I don't have to see the guy again who molested me. I don't have to deal with the team and the street. Everybody in the street reminding me, when are you coming back to play again? So, all those like pressures just disappeared. But that's when I realized, when I moved to America, is when I realized that I'm a black man. And that really, I used to get really pissed back in college when someone is like, oh yeah, a black man. To me, in my head, I could not process that properly because I grew up in a country where everyone was black and we didn't really, call each other a black man. And so, it was something that really bothered me. And then it took me a while to grasp. But at the same time, it just like heightened my stress. And somewhere I just got ashamed of even being black, which is something that I've never experienced. I was very proud of who I am. I came from the Mandinka tribe. We're very proud. Everybody looked up to the tribe. And then all of a sudden it was like I realized that I am a minority, I'm a black man. It's like, it's even within the African American community, I could not even relate to African Americans as well. So it's like, it's like this different class of blackness as well. So it was so much information that even put me in a very deep like cocoon of not wanting to deal with anything. But at the same time, I was experiencing a lot of pain, and which even made it worse, until I was dating a girl in college, I think like 8 years ago, who was like, hey, you definitely need to go see a therapist, you need help. And me being proud, and with all the issues, I was like, no, I don't need a therapist. But then after she left, I was like, maybe I do need a therapist, because this is getting out of hand. I was relying on her for everything. And after going through that process of talking to a psychologist and just learning everything about myself and just focusing, going back into the trauma, literally I actually forgot about being molested, even losing my friend. It took me a minute to remember his name. That's how powerful the mind is. Like it will save you from all of this, you know um um trauma that happened in your past, just so that you can function, because it's really hard to deal with trauma and then and not know how to cope with it. So your mind is literally going to stop you from going down that hole, but at the same time it's going to keep reminding you through all the stresses, as far because for me it was like a stutter constantly, because I have this thing that needed to come out, but I didn't know how to communicate it. So I was constantly stressed about literally everything was a trigger to all of my trauma, but at the same time my mind was protecting me from talking about it. And I'm just like, oh my god, this. So after going through therapies, when I learned about all of those things and being able to identify what's real and what's not, and know what happened in the past and what all of those trauma meant, and all of those stresses, and especially being abused, and how not to let that be my identity. It's not my fault, and my friend passing away, it's not my fault either. I was a little kid. What could I mean, I can't do anything at the moment except just just held on to the memories, but not let them eat me. So it's like all of these things I was able to learn through going through therapy, and it took me like 2 years to fully grasp that. And little by little, my stutter just disappeared. It's like it's like it got to a point where I wasn't even thinking about the stutter anymore, because my confidence that I had playing sports came back. Uh, Literally, it just came back because I was talking about all the trauma and all the things that I was ashamed of. And through that process of talking about it, it just it somewhere in my head, I just understand that I am not my mental illness. It's something that I go through right now, but it's not my identity. It's not who I am, and it's not my fault. And that little mantra, I call it now, it's something that I constantly just replay in my head whenever I'm having anxiety attacks about a client just like opting out, or one of my employees having some issues with with families. I'm saying, okay, all right, this is just an experience right now. It's like, it's not who you are, because I have a tendency of just taking everything and be like, oh, it's my fault. But yeah, so it's like that literally saved my life. Um and it was a very important part of my life as far as becoming who I am today. And and slowly, I went from joining a band. I joined a band because I was playing drums and I was dancing. I didn't have to talk to anyone, and it was something that I was doing. Literally, I hated even singing, but they will make me sing, but I hated it. And after leaving the band, and then I ended up getting into like entrepreneurship. And that's when I learned about all of these issues. And slowly, as my personality was going back to the person that I'm actually that I am, which is the very confident kid, great soccer player, giving myself props, great soccer player. But yeah, it's like from that into now, who I am, which is, I build a business. I probably would have never done that if I still didn't know about mental illness, thanks to my ex-girlfriend who point that turn that switch in my brain. So it's like going through that saved my life. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish now with my film.
Well, let's talk about that film. And first off, people can learn more about the film. They could learn
Mhm,
about Abraham and everything that he is working on at
mhm, mhm,
freedomprojectkc.com. And when you go to the website, the among the many aspects of the website, it in referring to the Freedom Project, talks about awareness, and then
mhm,
the what, it says the Freedom Project is about raising awareness about mental health in our community. By
mhm,
using the power of storytelling, this documentary will explore aspects of our community that are affected by mental health and mental illness. And I mean, you're the perfect spokesperson because you've
mhm.
gone through it all, and I suppose still going through it because in some form or another you always will. How big of a leap was that for you to turn the spotlight onto yourself?
I mean, I would say astronomical. I mean, yeah, it was definitely a very big leap because even when I first started doing the project, I was putting the spotlight on everyone else because again, I was still dealing with my own illness. So I was healing while doing the research because I was still going through therapy, and literally everything that I learned, I was sharing it on Instagram because it was so fascinating. But until one of my really good friends, he actually passed away. He was like, you need to start telling your own story. You need to put the spotlight on yourself because this documentary manifested from your pain, from your experience, and who you are today, and how you've overcome a very like bad stutter to becoming who I am today. So I had to, even though I was very, very, very afraid to even talk about myself because I came from Africa and I do still have those values, and where I've been taught not to put my own issues in front of everybody's plate. And so it's like, don't like talk about your feelings, even though I was talking about giving people space to talk about their own trauma, etc. So I had to turn the spotlight on myself and actually be brave to talk about it. And that's when the documentary actually started moving, because I was in a very one aspect of it, just writing, but I was in telling why I'm doing it. But the moment I did the why aspect of it, literally within the month, the documentary became global. I
Hmm.
have people from everywhere just like, hey, we just heard your story about you being having a bit really bad stutter. I would never imagine that. And it was so, just the story was so powerful. And now I'm coming out talking about my own stutter. Like, I had to literally have a copyright which is that I'm not a psychologist. Everything that I say should not be considered, because I'm getting people that are always like, oh my god, I didn't realize this is what anxiety was. To me, it was a joke. I just say, oh, I'm just anxious. People define themselves as the illness, and that alone has so much influence on the way we see ourselves, and that only limits us from achieving the things that we really want to achieve, because we're dealing with something and we automatically say, hey, I'm just anxious, I don't want to deal with this. Oh, I have OCD, I can't deal with people. And then we just stop ourselves from actually ascending. So it's like, these are all the things that I keep hearing from other people whenever they send me a message, and somewhere in my head I can make the connection and be like, oh my god, I need to tell this story. So that's why it's 16 episodes now, because of all the stories that I keep getting on a global level. But yeah, we have a team in India now that has a global connection, so they're the one kind of spreading the message, which is pain is something that we have in common. But we don't really talk about it, we don't understand it, and we are constantly on guard and trying to stop anyone from understanding that pain and becoming vulnerable, because that's where I was until I was like, hey, you need to go get help, and I actually went for it after losing something very, very important. Yeah.
So it's a number of episodes. I know the first one on there, which people could see on the website, is
Hmm.
about sports. Episode one, sports and mental health, and you've
Yes.
obviously got the experience. You've met a lot of people along the way too. Is it
Mhm.
what's the format of all of it?
So the format is, number one, to talk about different aspect of social problem, because sports alone is it's one of the most important pillars in society itself, and the people that are playing the sports usually aren't, they're just considered to be okay, they're considered to just figure things out, they're considered or like expected to just be okay because they're
Because
making
they're
a lot
tough.
of
They're
money.
supposed
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
tough.
exactly. So you were supposed to be tough. Like back when I was playing sports, even though I was a kid, I was all veins. I could play with all the kids, and I can beat someone older than me because I was really tough. But I mean, that's not the whole point of playing. I'm not saying you should go beat people, but
Right, right.
but it's like, I was really like incredibly in shape, and that's what people expect. And the moment we talk about our emotions, we're automatically just just like written off, because you're not supposed to
Yeah.
talk about it because you were really strong, like yeah, you have money, but the thing is, people forget that we, all of the athletes have bills to deal with. They have credit card bills to pay, they have house payment, they have kids that are getting sick, wives, family members, they're dealing with the impact of the sport itself. I've talked to a few sports players that have told me, I almost attacked my family, and and that alone blows my mind, and I don't know where that comes from. It's trauma from the impact itself alone. It's just something that a lot of people don't consider, because, oh, we're super, you're a superhero, you're built like one, so just get it over it. So it's like, that's the kind of issue, that is a social problem, but a lot of people don't consider it, because again, you were just expected to deal with it. So I'm using different categories around the social problem, which is like sports as a one, because that's something that I personally dealt with. I'm using domestic violence, because kids are involved, they're having to see their parents. I'm using, you know a child abuse, like, or because I have experienced that, and how child abuse have definitely impacted me and who I am. And different, like human trafficking, like all these social issues that are constantly being talked about in the news, and people are pumping money, but the problem is no one is talking about the core issues of all of this social problem, which is mental illness. The people alone are sick, the people alone are dealing with problems, they have to pay bills. And America is a very anxious society in general, that there has to be a focus on mental illness for people to actually care about all of these other problems. Because today someone can come out and trying to raise money for, let's say, domestic violence awareness, but the person that you were wanting to convince to talk about, to actually help you raise awareness, are the person that's abusing someone else, because they're in pain, because hurt people. So it's like that vicious cycle of like constant pain is what I'm trying to just clip and actually tell people, okay, let's invest into the human mind, let's invest into the people instead of infrastructure, like all development, people first, and then we would see the ripple, kind of like the ripple effect of people affecting other people and impacting other people. So that's the structure. But yeah, again, I'm using social problems to talk about mental health. I'm hoping I'll be able to capture that very beautifully. So that's why I'm taking my time in the writing aspect of it. I'm only working with people with PhDs because I'm not the smartest guy, but I have the idea. So it's like trying to put it into paper. English is my fourth language, so but yeah,
I,
and
I th- yeah, I think you're doing just fine. You're doing great, as a matter of fact. So so much progress made, still so much further to go.
yeah.
Let's talk then in the grand scheme of things. My
Mhm.
baseball themed questions. What's the biggest home run? What's been that big moment for you so far?
The biggest home run on a personal level, I would say just being able to talk. Like it's
Yeah.
like that's why I'm just talking. Literally, I'm just talking everywhere I go now. And people are like, "Wow, you must be a very personable guy." I'm just like, "If only you knew." It's like, it's like I used to be not be able to talk. So on a personal level, that is something that I would consider as a home run. But on a business level, if that's even a thing, but it's like being able to build a business with all of the struggles that I experience, and having to break through that stigma of someone with mental issues being able to build a business that did about $40 million in sales for all of my combined clients, and having like clients from literally every parts of America and even Africa. So it's like that's one thing that I would those two aspects on the personal and business sides that I would consider as a home run. Because even today, I was actually just reflecting, because I try to do that every day now, just sort of because just so I can wake up and just feel good about just waking up in general. So I would like reflect and just write about all the things that I have accomplished, and I'm just like, wow, it's been such a challenging journey, but at the same time, I've accomplished so many things that I like tend to forget. So two home runs, I guess, and a business
No.
and personal.
Yep. Both
Yeah.
of them incredibly meaningful. How about a swing and a miss and something you learned from it?
Yeah, so like I mentioned in the beginning, I was in a band called the Battery Tour. I was the co-founder, drummer, marketing guy, developed a business plan, literally because kind of like a startup. That's the whole point of it. But we had an incredible product that AY is doing phenomenal with right now,
Mhm.
which was the Battery Tour product itself. So AY actually developed the prototype. So when I came in, he was doing tours and just trying to figure out how to scale that. So when I came in with my marketing mind and just kind of like talked to him, and we kind of figured out all that out, I actually loved the product because it was going to change lives. It was going to impact a lot of people. And but I had to leave because I just I guess it's not even a swing and a miss. It's like a swing and I missed, and it was like, okay, this was a good miss. It was not meant to be a home run. Because if I had made a home run, probably the battery throw would not be where it is today. So it was something that I was there to just push it further and then continue on my journey. So I actually loved that project. It was, it also contributed to my personality as well, being exposed to a lot of people that I hated AY for it. He was always just like pushing me into all of these crowds and making me sing. And I'm like, oh my God, why are you doing this? Let me just be in my computer and just
Mhm.
work. And, I did a lot of things. So that was a swing and a miss, but in a good way.
Well, for those that
Mhm.
don't know AY, or maybe you've heard the name, you have heard him. You heard him at the start of this uh,
Mhm.
podcast on the audio version, not on the YouTube, but he was the one that created the theme
Mhm.
song for this podcast. And I
Oh,
know that
yeah.
AY never has a quiet moment. AY is
Mhm.
a big personality and a big performer. So
Yep.
I know that if you were working with AY, there's
Mhm.
no isolation there at a time where
Oh,
you
man.
probably were looking to. You're better suited right now to be standing
Mhm.
right next to AY diving
I
in the
know,
middle
yeah.
with your personality, right? But
No, yeah,
that's but
for
that's
sure.
that's my point. Like your energy in many ways
Mhm.
to me uh, reminds me of what I see from him.
I know.
So it resonates with me that that
Mhm.
energy was muted for years
I know, it
because of
was.
your mental health, and
Mhm.
now you've been able to overcome so much and be out there. Yeah, AY was a past guest on this show,
Mhm.
and then I sort of jokingly, maybe not so jokingly, said, "Hey, you want to put together a theme song
Oh, yeah, he
for
would
the
do it.
podcast?" And he did, and
Uh,
it's catchy and it's there, and so I'm grateful to AY, and he's doing great work
I know
in
he
the world too. Last baseball theme question for you, Abraham, and this one will be about small ball. What are the little things that add up to the home runs in your world?
Yeah, so, I actually did a lot of, like, odd jobs, along the way, one of which was, me, working for, what's the name of this pest control company again? Blue Beetle, the cars with the little antennas. So I was working for Blue Beetle for like 2 years after leaving the battery tour because I was trying to figure myself out. So I had my business going, but I wasn't sure whether to even do it. And I was working for Blue Beetle and just traveling all over the state and just doing pest control work. And one day I saw um, a a uh, a post on Craigslist of a guy who wanted to buy like a heat machine, and Blue Beetle, we Mitch and the owner had a lot of those machines, and I was like, hey, we can sell this. There's someone online that wanted to buy it, and I just took the machine, went to Texas, drove all the way to Texas to sell it. And the guy who ended up buying that machine was my first client. Literally, I got there, and he owns like a very big textile company. And when I delivered the machine, he was so grateful. He was like, "Wow, I can't believe you actually drove from Kansas City to Texas to meet a stranger that you met on Craigslist to sell him like like a $12,000 machine or something." Because I was gonna give everything to Mitch, and then he would pay me for the travels and then the commission that I made. I don't remember how much it was, but it was a lot of money for where I was back then. So I got there, and the guy, as we were talking, he's like, "I have a really bad website, and I'm a developer. And back then, I didn't even know you could make money out of it. I was just doing it for fun." I'm just like, "I can help you build your website." And then he's like, "Really?" I'm just like, "Yeah." And I ended up developing his website, and he paid me about 10 grand to do that. So that was like 5 years ago, or six, it's actually 6 years ago. So that was a lot of money. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know I could make money from building the things that I do all the time. And I came back, obviously left Blue Beetle, but that little decision to just take the risk and just go and do something that was not expected at all led to me building an entire agency from that decision. So yeah, very 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 small, but it definitely added to my success today, or sort of success. It's like,
Start of
yeah,
success,
yeah,
ongoing. It is an ongoing process.
it is.
We're going to wrap things up with four final questions as
Hmm.
we round the bases. The first one, I'm always so fascinated about just the cultures of different countries, and not
Yeah.
just different countries, different parts of this country, of our
Hmm.
country here in the United States. You go to Kansas City, totally different than New York. Go
Yeah.
down to New Orleans, you'll get a different feel there. Go up to on and on and on,
Hmm.
rural, urban, and everything
Yep.
in between. And I know that there was a tradition where you grew up
Hmm.
in Gambia that pertained to wrestling,
Yep.
and share that 'cause it sounds like it's something that really is a part of kids growing up and in
Yeah.
communities.
Yeah. So back in Gambia, growing up in Ireland, playing soccer, uh, literally whenever you go to the beach up until today, it's like a bunch of guys just exercising, wrestling. But I think the wrestling came from Senegal. I probably shouldn't admit this as being a Gambian, but the Gambian would say no, this is our thing, and Senegal would say no, this is our thing. But it's bigger in Senegal. It's like where even China is like investing into the games. But in Gambia, growing up, wrestling was like number two is like everybody knows how to wrestle. So we would go to the beach and just exercise and just wrestle each other, and then that would be like a community game where everybody will like come out and just root for your favorite like wrestler. But it's not very like high impact. It's like you just use your hand, no punching. The goal is to pick up someone and then put them on on their back. So depending on how quick the person is, sometimes you may even try to put them on their back and they'll do like a weird flip. It's like so entertaining to watch it. But to me, just the community part of it, just being supported by your household and your friends, everybody like rooting for you, was such a fun part. I mean, I never kind of like do the wrestling part of it, but I had a lot of friends that were doing it. I just do it for fun at the beach. But just the community of everybody just kind of like supporting each other and just singing songs, and it was a whole different feel, and it's something that I actually miss until today. So sometimes I'll go to YouTube and like watch like Senegalese like
Mhm.
wrestlings, because they actually scaled it into something totally different. And but yeah, I feel like just the community part of it stuck with me, and just having fun. Yeah, it was a big thing.
Well, you mentioned, and you've
Mhm.
mentioned it many times, the word community, which
Yeah.
I'll say over and over again with my partner and sponsor,
Oh yeah, I
Community
get that.
America, and the way that they are so involved in
Yeah.
our community here.
Mhm.
Alkamba,
Mhm.
meaning community, is perfect. And I was thinking about this, and this will be my second question for you as we round the bases. And I don't want to get too heavy or serious, but you
Mhm.
overcame so much, and so much of what started
Mhm.
back in your homeland of Gambia. And
Yeah.
not that everything was bad in Gambia, but you had
Mhm.
something bad happen. And the reason I bring that up is it sounds like you lived in a beautiful community with amazing people and great customs and
Mhm.
support.
Yeah.
But yet it was one quick moment, not just the loss of your friend,
Mhm.
but and that tragedy, but being molested by someone that was so well respected in the community, and then the
Mhm.
stigma and everything too. Do you
Yeah.
still have those strong feelings towards your community that you grew up in, and have
Mhm.
you been able to take so much of your passion of pushing things forward
Mhm.
to influence in any way those that you love back there?
Oh yeah, I mean, even till today, I still have so much love for my community, and just the whole experience of growing it in like such a stable, and even in me living in America now, I'm even more grateful for the fact that I grew up with a family, because I know a lot of friends that don't know their dad. They cannot trace back to their grandparents. To me, I can go literally five different grandparents. We have even Kunta Kinte. He's in my bloodline. He's like one of the first people from West Africa that was brought here. So it's like, I can trace all the way back. We have a shrine of all of his things back there. But it's like the thing with trauma is that it doesn't really care how stable your community is. If internally you are not, together, or like centered, or know what's wrong with you, no matter how stable your community is, trauma is going to come in and shake it. So that's why, now I'm constantly advocating for people to just try to understand, get a journal and just write all the things that are going on in your head, and talk to someone about it. And because trauma doesn't care whether you have money, you're the president of America, it's going to eat you up little by little. And yeah, I mean, I like I said, I had a great community in Africa, but still I was in pain, whenever I'm by myself. But with the community, the issues are kind of paused, because people are there. I'm distracted. But the moment I leave, is just like all of this just cloud just comes in my mind, and I didn't know how to deal with it, and that was very painful, because I didn't have the space to deal with it, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I guaranteed there's going to be one person watching this that are like, wow, I didn't know that was considered as trauma or anxiety. But even though you were okay living your life, that doesn't mean that you haven't dealt with a mental illness. Yep.
Third third question as we round the bases: when you were at your best in either of these things, better musician or better soccer player?
I would say a better soccer player, because music was something that I like to do by myself until AY started pushing and and having me do it. I mean, I feel like people would like, react okay, but I am my worst enemy, so I was constantly like, oh my god, that was so bad. I don't know why people like clapping. It could be the fact that I was doing country music, and as a black person, doing country was such a different thing. And I wear hats all the time, so people are like, huh, that is different. So people would react to me as a person doing the song, but not so much as my singing. But yeah, to be honest, yeah, but I'm definitely a better soccer player than singing for sure.
Can you still play? Do you still play at all?
I haven't played in probably 6 months now, but I try to play whenever I have the opportunity. But yeah, I actually play at the soccer lot a lot now. We take our son there now, and he hates soccer and it breaks my heart. But I keep taking him, and for funny thing, he loves baseball. He keeps saying home
All right.
run, and I was like, okay, I guess he likes baseball, but I'm
Hey,
confident he's gonna like soccer. He's only 3, so there's a lot of
you
time,
got time.
yeah,
Yeah,
to
you got
like
time.
test and keep like pushing soccer
Yeah.
until he.
You'll 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 see what he likes. He'll let you know. Just
Yeah,
just like you did growing up too. All right,
yep.
last question as we round the bases, our walk off here. Let's talk about the project and where you want it to go. I know you want to
Mhm.
affect as many people as you can. I
Yeah.
know that you want to help those that are dealing with trauma, that are dealing with mental health, which is almost everybody really in some form or another. It's all of us.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
and having been a survivor of being molested, having been a
Mhm.
survivor of trauma, watching your best friend drown, having
Mhm.
overcome a severe stutter, you have already accomplished so much, but I know that you're just getting started too. So, what's the ultimate goal for
Man.
the Freedom Project?
Uh, for the Freedom Project specifically, the ultimate goal is to basically bring Hollywood in Kansas City. So I actually recently acquired a partnership with the city of Kansas City, and I'm hoping to further that partnership. I don't even know what it means right now, but I just wanted to just get that partnership now. But with the Freedom Project, I want to be able to create a hub of information when it comes to mental illness. That could be video, podcast, like a bunch of documentary series, YouTube series, just talking about mental health, using social problems to talk about the actual illnesses, continuously going forward, and just create content around that area. So that's the goal for the Freedom Project. But wanting to bring film in Kansas City, and film interest, like places like Netflix, like all of them, to come shoot their films in Kansas City, that came from a personal a reason, which is seeing all of my friends having to leave and go to Hollywood just to make it, or and end up becoming homeless there. Is I want to bring film in Kansas City where we can hire all of them, and just create jobs for my friends, basically, because that's why I have a lot of contractors, because I'm just hiring friends and like working with them, and some of them I don't even need to hire them, but it's like, they have so much talent, and I'm just like, dude, let's work. So I'm hoping at the end goal is to partner with the city, an official partnership where we would have like incentives for Hollywood to come and shoot Hollywood projects here, so that we can create jobs and actually have a film studio in Kansas City. I'm not even sure what that looks like, just have the idea in my head, but I'm on step 0.1 on the Freedom Project, which is getting the project out, finishing it, and now getting distribution deals coming in, hopefully in a year. That's my goal. But currently, we've only done one episode, which was based around sports. I'm doing an event around it, on which I want to do the preview at the Kaufman Center, because I have a lot of partners within Kansas City and now nationwide, just to show my appreciation, and then bring all the advocates in one building, uh, just to kind of cut through the miscommunication that happens around mental illness, because everybody is talking about different things. So having all of them in one room, and we can all get to know each other, and constantly do events around the country, and just talking about Freedom Project, so that everyone can be the freest versions of themselves and be able to know who they are to their core, because that's how I feel right now. I'm like extremely happy, and it's like an abundance of happiness. I know everybody says that online nowadays, be abundant. Like, but like, that's how I feel. Like, I'm so happy that I don't understand. I mean, I know where it came from, which is the self-awareness of myself, and just being okay, and not having all those expectations that I had myself, but I wasn't taking the action. but it's like that's what I genuinely want everyone to like experience, like I do, like I did, and I'm still doing. But yeah, kind of like a long-winded explanation of my end goal.
Well,
But
there's a lot going on, and people
yeah.
can learn everything that you want about
Mhm.
all of the work that Abraham is doing. There are a number of ways to do that. First and foremost, you can go to the website. And if you're watching the YouTube video, you see that website up there right now, but it'll be in the notes as well. freedomprojectkc.com. I know that Abraham mentioned Instagram earlier, so you'll see a lot of what he is doing and more about him. You can go to his Instagram, which is Abraham Advocates. So
Mhm.
Abraham and then ADVOCATES, Abraham Advocates. The Facebook page, if you just search for Freedom Project KC, you will find that. He's also on Twitter, Abraham Advocate. And so there are a
Mhm.
lot of ways to be able to get a hold of Abraham. The official name is Ebrima
Mhm.
Sisay, but Abraham, that certainly works every time as well. I think that what we're seeing here right now is the start. It's not the start. I know you've been working and working and working and
I know
working,
it's
but
been a long process, but it's
it
just
is.
0.1, I say.
But
Zero
it's
point
but I think you're off and running and you're headed in the right direction. And most importantly, you're helping people here in this community around the states
1.
and around the world. And I know that you having gone through this know the importance of giving people a voice and removing this stigma. So I want to thank you for sharing your story, for all of the work you are doing. Again, it is freedomprojectkc.com. Ebrima Abraham Sisay. Abraham, thanks so much for spending time today on Rounding the
Yeah.
Bases.
No, for sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is awesome.